If you're a real estate agent looking to switch brokerages or a brand new agent looking to find the right brokerage, real estate brokerage for you, this is an outstanding place to be. So today we're going to talk with a top real estate agent, broker owner, Garrett Bell from Denovo Realty, and we're going to address the questions that if you're a real estate agent, you need to be asking of the brokerage you're going to. Because I see a lot of real estate agents that go from brokerage to brokerage, and maybe they went for the right reasons, maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't know the questions to ask. And this video is certainly for you if you have an inkling in your head you might change brokerages, or if you're thinking about starting somewhere. So with no further ado, let's just get right into it. This is Joe Harris, Morgan Financial. I'm here with Garrett Bell from Denovo Realty.
Yes, thanks for having me, Joe.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have some pretty fun topic today. We're going to talk about why an agent, what they should look for in a brokerage when they're looking to switch or starting out. But before we get into that, tell me about your journey to get to where you are today, or how'd you get to own a
My
real estate
background.
brokerage? Yep.
Sure. I'll give you the short version. Family's been in real estate for a long time. Got into real estate 2013 full time. And so I was an agent for about 7 or 8 years at Coldwell Banker, and I always had the desire to have my own brokerage, had a vision for it, and long-term goal. Wanted to get to the point where I felt like I could help other agents, and confident in my ability to do so. So 2020 opened up Denovo Realty, and 4 years since then. So
Awesome.
That's the short and sweet version of it.
And so 2020, was it beginning of 2020, mid 2020?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was January 2020, and I went all in and I bought a building. So I bought in August 2019, did a big renovation. January comes along, we open, and then COVID hit right after that. And right at the beginning, it was like terrifying because I was like, I just spent a bunch of money. I'm like, what's going to happen? But as we all have seen since then, market went crazy after that. So I'll call it lucky.
Well, I remember 2020 very well, and I'm in with David Morgan. We're saying, well, we got they shut everything down, and we're like, we got this much cash left. We can keep people employed for this long, and then, that wasn't the problem we had. We had a different problem. It was like, oh my God, we can't hire fast enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, different times, obviously. And
same worry. I was like, oh God, what's gonna happen? I spent all this money.
Yeah, right. And then, so take me forward to 2024, January 2024. How many agents about now do you have?
65 agents.
65. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Good size.
Good size. Started at just myself, and had two employees that worked with me at Coldwell Banker.
Okay.
So they came on board with me, made the whole transition. So they've been with me from the beginning. So shout out to Linda and Shelby.
Still with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're long term together. So appreciate them. They had a lot to do with getting started, and they do an amazing job. So grateful for them.
I think Shelby just got married, right?
She did.
Yeah.
Yes, November. Yes.
Cool. All right. So the gist of our conversation today is really, there's agents out there. Sometimes, same with loan officers. They can be like nomads. They're bouncing from brokerage to brokerage, or they'll be at a brokerage a long time, and then they'll make a decide. They'll want to think about shifting or moving. So we're trying to put into perspective like some of the things an agent should really consider, right? So what qualities in your mind should an agent consider when switching or choosing a brokerage?
Yeah. I think that, when depending on either way, whether at the very beginning or you've been an agent for a while and you're considering switching, the business model is a super important part of that because every brokerage operates differently. So you have, cloud-based brokerages, that are maybe considered more hands-off. You have, kind of then the extreme opposite of smaller team-based brokerages that are based around, a ton of support and everything. So I think starting with who you are and what you're looking for is the most important because that's operationally, where you fit into it operationally. After that, culture is extremely important. real estate, whether you're in, that business model where it's more of a hands-off model, or you're in the one that's, a very hands-on, close-knit group of people, the culture is extremely important because you're going to need some level of support at some time. You're representing that business, that business is a representation of you, so you have to have a cultural fit. And then how the business operates, because there's a lot of different business models out there, and good or bad, it's not that, it's just that they're different. And understanding what you want in that model and what fits best for you is probably the beginning step of that.
So there's no one size fits all. It really depends on the individual, their needs, and there's a brokerage for everybody out there.
Yeah.
It's just which one.
And that's why there's so many brokerages out there, and whether even just looking at the big franchise corporate owned companies, those have all different types of business models, and there isn't, just as an agent operates their own business differently, you got to find which one lines up with what lines up best with your personal business.
Yeah, cool. So I'm going to go right into the one that I'm going to ask your opinion on where do you think this falls in the level of importance? And that's the commission splits. So what should an agent consider when evaluating? Because the splits are the same thing. There's the whole gambit, right?
Yeah.
So how should they evaluate that, and what do you think is important in that realm?
I think from an agent standpoint, with whichever way you want to go, you can go to a essentially flat fee brokerage, or you're paying, X amount per closing. It's fixed the entire time. It's a low amount, and you're getting essentially no support running your own business. So the importance of it is high. It's the money at the end of the day. So all of that then comes back to what you're looking for. And from an agent standpoint, their thing in any business period is going to be, am I getting my value worth for the money? So that's where you see, how an agent evaluates where they choose. If I'm paying, extreme example is going to be the opposite of the hands-off, is going to be super close-knit team, full support. You're in communication, working with them on a daily basis. Your split's going to be, you're going to receive a lower portion of it, but you're going to be getting a lot more out of it. So your business model, and what you're looking for. And from a trajectory standpoint of an agent, you have someone that's been in the business for a long time. They've developed their own path in how they do business. The team model may not make sense for them, where they're giving out, because at the end of the day, it's the money part of it. It's important. And neither right or wrong. There's a ton of, don't talk to me. I want to just, from a legal standpoint, you're there, but I'm running my whole thing. I'm creating everything. I'm doing all the transaction-related, marketing-related, and I want to give you a tiny little piece of it. So knowing what you want is the start of it, but of course, it is important.
Right. Well, I guess you can look at it. It's who's paying who, right? You have a commission split, but if it's on the lower side, you're really paying that broker to help you out, or that brokerage. You're looking for more support. If it's on the higher side, well, it's you're getting more because it's more hands off, like you said. So it's somewhere depends on what you're getting for that, like you said, the value.
And that's where, as an agent, when it comes to choosing the value, and it's obviously difficult to tell when you don't work somewhere, and the grass is always greener and things like that. But you want to get the value out of whatever it is, whether it's low side, high side. The value's got to be there.
Yeah, and one of the things I see as value is training and education or mentorship. And what kind of training and mentorship opportunities should an agent be looking for, or should they expect from a good brokerage?
So I think you have I'm early on in my career, and mentorship works well for a lot of those. And then you have the experienced agents that I'm beyond that point of needing my hand held. I need more of like support as far as business generation, improving, working on my business versus working in the business.
Right.
So, early on in your career, you want to have, I think for all levels, people need questions answered. So when figuring out where you want to work, do you have someone that can answer questions? And from that support standpoint, a person been in the business 10, 15 years, they're still going to have questions because they're going to run into situations that they haven't been in before. That's a big piece that I would say is important. Any of these business models that we're talking about, you got to have the ability to get questions answered quickly.
Yeah, that's provides a big value to especially a new or an experienced agent, right?
I've been, 12 years or so in it, and I run into things all the time still that I've just never seen before. And, and that'll be that way 30 years in the business.
Right.
Stuff changes, situations you just never heard of come up.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in sales and real estate financing for a long time, and every day you get something new.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, well, okay. Well, I mean, I know I have the tools to figure it out, but it's like you've never experienced this one piece before. Like
the fun, which makes it fun.
Right.
That's the exciting part of the business.
Sure.
It's always changing and new.
Right. Culture. I think you've mentioned culture a couple times, but how does the size and culture of a brokerage affect an agent's work experience? Like, how do you feel? I mean, how do you see the culture and the size of the brokerage affect?
I think obviously the bigger a brokerage is, it's more difficult to control culture. And, part of that's being, you'll see mass business models and they, expand extremely rapidly and they have thousands and thousands of people. It's more difficult to control culture. However, at the end of the day, it's still extremely important and not impossible. You can have, I can't think of a business off the top of my head, but you can have a 10,000 person company with a really strong culture that, it's a extremely high priority for that company and they've executed well on it and they have a great culture. So from a size versus is size important with culture? It's more difficult, but you can have a great culture with a big company, small company. Obviously the less bodies that you have, the easier it is to control culture. But importance of it's high either way.
Yeah, I mean, we look at culture. We'll tell you over and over, culture is our biggest asset. We've grown to 50 employees locally, W-2. So. And when you maintain that culture, it allows you to do great things.
Yeah.
If the culture, I mean, every company has a culture, whether they know it or not, whether they work on it or not, there's a culture. They might have a culture of no culture, which we've all seen that.
Yeah.
But even that, I mean, or it could be a toxic culture, and a good culture can make a huge difference in how a company performs. I mean, it's incredible.
And when you know your culture, and you can describe it in detail, and you know what you want it to be, then you can execute on that. Like if you just don't know what it is, then it can be good, but there's a really good chance at some point if you can't describe it and know what it is, it's going to turn out wrong.
Well, I learned this recently. There's a term called ethos, and that's what you want your culture to be, right? That's and then there's culture, which is what it actually is, you know. Even though I use culture in the definition of ethos, I think you know what I'm saying, but there's this vision of what we have, what we are the staff and the people and the employees would embody, and then there's what actually is the culture. And sometimes there's a big disconnect. Like the higher up thinks it's one way, but everyone else says it's so. There's two cultures running, And when you have that cohesion of culture, I mean, it really makes the difference between a good company and a great company.
Absolutely.
Cool. So how does the reputation of a brokerage, right, impact an agent's business?
I think it's a really big impact, and I think probably, obviously you have brokerage to public and you have, B2B in the business, brokerage to other brokerage. I would say it probably impacts in the business even more because, there's a lot of brokerages and a lot of agents in Brevard County, but it's still a relatively small-ish community. and we're all working together. We've all, agents that have been around have worked with each other multiple times, and having the positive reputation within the community because we all work together and we're all part of, we have a big impact on the deal. Like, that's our job.
Yeah.
So having a good reputation is super important. I think almost more so from a brokerage to brokerage standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree 100%. And that, I mean, deals get put together by agents.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a client in there, but at the end of the day, it's the agents have to work together. And if the reputation's sullied or poor, it's going to affect the outcome.
And I feel like I saw probably the biggest impact of that when, like, during that COVID period of there's, 15 offers on a property, and and during that, you get 5 of these damn offers are just about the same,
right?
And the agents that were building good relationships with each other, it was I know so and so, I know they can get the deal done, and then I got this other one over here that's like, we've had some nightmare run-ins in the past. Like, hey, client, I think if we go with this one, we got a much higher likelihood of it getting to the closing table. So it was a, big impact during any time period, but I think you saw it a lot during that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, we saw it even from our standpoint as a lender.
The lender with big impact on, is this a lender with a bad reputation that can't get this loan closed?
Right.
Because we got the same exact offer on both of them.
Right.
So let's go with the person that gets it closed.
That's a whole nother podcast, brother.
Yeah.
I could tell you stories. I have one right now that, well, I don't want to get into it. It's not from us, but we get these like, hey, can you close this? And we got a week left on the contract. And the other lenders, we turned someone down for what they wanted to do. They said, well, this broker will do it. This lender will do it. And guess what? They couldn't. And now they're coming back to us. I'm like, yeah, we'll help you. We'll get it, but we have to do it the way we talked about it up front.
Yep.
But that's whatever. Neither here nor there.
For another day.
Another day. But so in the late 2000s, like 2006 to 2009, I remember how important online presence was. And then mid 2000s, it kind of I don't know if it shifted, but social media became more prevalent in our industry. And where do you see the importance of online presence for a brokerage right now, and what impact does that play really on a decision a new agent or an agent that's looking to shift might make?
I would say 15, 20 years ago, there was a lot of importance on the brand name of the brokerage. And meaning, you have these big brokerages, a Remax, a Coldwell Banker, Century 21, and way back when you had a lot of a buyer, seller would be like, I want to work with a Century 21 agent because I've had a good experience with them in the past. Then there was a shift from that to the branding became the agent themselves. So, I want to call X agent because, of their brand and their reputation. So I think the shift, and will 100% continue this way for as far as I can see into the future. But from a brokerage standpoint, it's about helping that specific agent build their brand versus building the brokerage's brand. Building the brokerage's brand doesn't do nearly as much as it does for helping your agents build their individual brand, because that's what the business is now.
It's interesting you say that because, the big names, and you don't need to go on the detail of them, but, they promoted themselves. You'd call the 1-800 number and they get you to an agent. And I'm thinking about that shift that happened, like you said, and it probably had a lot to do with social media and people being able to brand and market themselves, not at a tremendous expense like it would have been, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, and then now they can truly be the CEO of their own business as a real estate agent to grow their own brand within a brand.
A TV commercial back in the day, you got a 20-second spot, and online social media completely shifted that, which shifted, because the agents are the one that's out there meeting the client. That's who they have their phone number. That's who they call and they talk to. A buyer goes through a transaction, seller goes through a transaction. They don't ever call me to talk to me. I don't talk directly to the client. It's helping that specific agent build their own brand.
Yeah, it's been interesting, that digital shift that we've had.
Yeah.
So if an agent has a particular niche or an area of interest, and how can they evaluate if a certain brokerage is good for their good fit for them and what their niche is?
I think that, when it comes to the individual agent, and, I could say specifically like with my office, we have a total range across the board of what that individual agent's target market niche is. And from a brokerage standpoint, and this is one thing that I talk to them about a lot, is developing their own. So from a brokerage standpoint, you want to be able to support whatever their specific niche is. Because of that, this disconnect of kind of what we just talked about, it's not about the brokerage's brand anymore. You have to be able to support that agent in whichever direction that they're going in, because that's such a huge piece of marketing, business generation, is knowing who your target market is and knowing it real specifically. The market is very saturated with real estate agents in every community in the world. Everybody's mother, sister, brother, cousin is a licensed real estate agent. And if you market to everybody, you market to nobody.
I agree.
So you have to have your individual niche out there to be able to grow that. So from the brokerage standpoint, it's the same thing. It's not about the brokerage's branding and who they brand to. You got to help that agent develop theirs.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you had one piece of advice for someone that's thinking about switching or thinking about joining a brokerage, what advice would you give to that person?
I think it would be the better that they know themselves and the better that they know what they want out of the business, getting into everything, these two things cross. Like when I think about our brokerage, who is our target market? What's our purpose? What are our core values? Mm-hmm. And I think from an agent standpoint, you don't really think about that much because you're like, I'm a real estate agent. I'm selling houses. I don't need to get all conceptual and think about all this, goo goo gaga stuff. But the better that you know that, the easier it is to figure out what's your best fit, because find the brokerage that aligns with you and know thyself.
Yeah. No, that's great advice, because I think a lot of people go to the, what's your split, what's this, what's that. But if the company doesn't align with their own views, at some point that relationship's going to get sullied. It's going to go south, because you can't work somewhere that has conflicting views that you do.
Yeah. And, and again, like if you have a split shop or whatever you want to call them, that financial piece, that is your thing. So, if I'm like, I just want to go where I get the highest split, then that makes, that if that is your top priority, then you go find someone that does some type of, flat fee or something like that. And there isn't, I don't think there is anything. Everybody's got their own business models, their own views, and
or you just
find
open up your own shop.
Yeah, open up your own shop, and
pay your
then you are the only support in that, and then you have your own shop. You're going to have the highest split you're going to have anywhere.
Right.
So
and no headaches, right? There's absolutely zero headaches. Yeah, yes. Right. No. But well, cool. No, I think that's really good advice. You got to know yourself. Like Sun Tzu where you got to know yourself first, right? But any other things? Any parting words? Any comments?
It's a great business, and there's a lot of good brokerages out there, and I think that's, some of my takeaway is from this conversation is, the more you know about your own business and the more you can develop your own, and obviously I work with real estate agents in my office all the time, and sometimes I get them to talk about this, conceptual stuff, and then their eyes are going to roll over in the back of their heads, but know your own, what's important to you from a value standpoint. And when you know that, and you can know your purpose and what you want out of the business, finding the place that makes the most sense for you becomes a whole lot easier than if someone asks you, like, what's important to you about, yourself, your real estate career, and you're like, I don't know, I just like to sell houses. Like, you got to know yourself better than that.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate it. Really good information and a lot to think about if you're a new agent out there that's looking to switch brokerages or join a new one. Go back through this, rewind it, subscribe, like, share, do all those things. We'll put Garrett's information down below if you want to reach out in any way, shape, or form. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
thanks, Garrett. I really appreciate it. Good
Absolutely.
stuff.
Good stuff, man.
Thanks.